Welcome back to Q&A Anime. You're here with Kadir and Akil, and today we're discussing One Piece Chapter 1044.
Yes, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications and updates, and let's get into it. Luffy is back up after getting defeated by Kaido. He doesn't even understand what's happening. He's like, how can I stand? I just lost, but I feel like I'm having a blast. And then Momonosuke announces Luffy is Joy Boy.
Yes, and it seems as though everyone's kind of taking notice of the big change that Luffy underwent. Not even fully understanding what's happening. We see that Sanji wakes up and immediately looks up and notices, and he is almost questioning it. He's like, Luffy? And same with Kid Law and Hyogoro. They also look up and notice something has changed, and they're like a little confused, because it seems as though it's him, but it's not him.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to figure it out. And then Marco also notices and immediately tells Nami and Otama, who are crying tears of joy to know that Luffy is in fact still alive.
And the Gorosei explain the true power of the fruit and why it's so dangerous.
Yes, it carries the name of a god and is actually a mythical zone. So just before we go any further, we'd like to point out, on point with our prediction before.
Yes, chapter 1043 video, you guys can watch it, posted more than 2 weeks ago. We nailed it. We got it right. We said that it was a mythical Zoan fruit.
Body has some kind of awakening.
So that would give the fruit a possibility of maybe being a Zoan fruit, you think? Like a mystical Zoan?
Maybe.
Because he's turning into something else?
Yeah.
And you know how Marco had specific, control over the different parts of his body to turn into a phoenix? Maybe that's what Luffy had with control of whatever Zoan type fruit Luffy might have.
Oh, hang on. I remember Joy Boy was tied, he was linked to the sun god. I don't remember what the sun god's name was, but do you remember that? There was I was gonna say there was a connection of something we knew between Joy Boy and the sun god. I wish I could remember its name, but I'm wondering if maybe...
Yes, with the fishermen pirates.
Yes, and so I'm wondering if maybe the zone, it is a mythical zone, and maybe it's the mythical zone of that sun god or something.
Because remember, Who's Who was mocking Jinbei over the legend of the sun god, and he was saying you joined that man's crew, being Luffy. And they were discussing the fruit. So I think it all ties together.
The sun god fruit. I have a quote from the video saying that. You're gonna see it in this video too. So make sure you give us our flowers.
Yeah, listen, for those of you who know, getting a prediction right in One Piece is no easy feat, because people are constantly throwing theories out, and then Oda will constantly end up going in an entirely different direction. So
yeah,
put a little respect on us for getting our predictions right.
Yeah.
But the Gorosei actually let us know it's the human fruit model Nika, which means grin for those of you who don't know. And I thought it was so interesting just to find out it was a human fruit. I didn't expect that to be what the base fruit was. And I love the fact that Chopper and Luffy are on the same crew, because Chopper has a human fruit, and then Luffy has this mythical version of the human fruit as well.
Yes, and those aren't the only two instances of the human fruit. There's two more, because Sengoku has the model Buddha.
Yes.
Mythical Zoan, that's a human fruit. And then there's another one that's referenced. It was eaten by a fox or something. But I think the most interesting part about the Zoan fruits is that the Gorosei explained that the Zoan fruits have a will of their own. And that's really important, because you remember how we would have objects that were Zoan fruits, and they were able to act on themselves. You remember, what's his name? From Enies Lobby, the dude with the elephant sword. Yeah, Spandam. He had the elephant sword, Siegfried, I think his name was. And the sword was able to act on its own as an elephant. And they were saying that they were always unable to get the Gamu Gamu no Mi because it's evading them. And again, that's when he mentioned that the Zoan fruits had a will of their own. So it's going to be interesting to see how much of Luffy's will aligns with the will that's inside the Nika no Mi, but it also goes deeper than that, because remember, a lot of One Piece talks about inherited will, and so Luffy's inherited the will of Joy Boy, and the fruit has its own will as well. So I just think that it's really cool that you have all this stuff that's like finally like tying together, because it seems like Luffy's inherited Ace's will, Roger's will, as far as we know, the will of the Sun God, Joy Boy's will, the previous Joy Boy that I'm talking about. And so we have something that's like snowballing into something that's pretty big, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially just because, like, we know for a fact that Roger was waiting for someone, and it had to be a specific person. Every single person who knew that Roger was waiting for someone, upon seeing Luffy, they're like, he has to be the one. Shanks gave up his arm for his sake because he was like, I'm betting on the new generation. Whitebeard and Rayleigh, both when they met him, were like, could this be the kid? This has to be the kid. And so it's like incredible just to like finally get some answers. And even then, like, we have answers and we still know so little. But it's incredible the fact that we can start tying little things together at least.
Yes. It's going to be amazing to see like what occurs now that we know that Luffy is Joy Boy, because on the Fishman Island you have the ark that's supposed to be carried to the top by Joy Boy. You have Madam what's her name? The shark chick. Madam, whatever her name is, she made the prediction that Luffy was going to destroy Fishman Island, right? Remember?
Oh, yeah.
So instead of maybe destroying Fishman Island, what he's doing is he's liberating them and pulling them to the surface. And that's like the big, like, maybe it's not a disaster that she saw, but maybe it's just like a big change. And Luffy bringing it to the surface could be that big change. Because the Sea Kings were talking about it too, Joy Boy. So Luffy's influence goes so far now that he's Joy Boy. I'm just so excited to see where this takes the series.
Yeah, absolutely. But we got a little off track, so let's get back into it.
Right.
When they tell us this, the human bottlenecker, they tell us a bit about the powers it has. They let us know that the user's body gains the properties of rubber in combat, which we already know and have seen. But it's only limited by the user's imagination, which probably explains why Luffy can do such outlandish things with his fruit. And even then, when Kaido was fighting him back when he said rubber shouldn't be able to do this, now we know it wasn't just rubber. It's the fact that as long as his imagination could come up with something, he could then do it.
Yes, and Awakening exponentially strengthened their rubbery body, and they gain even more freedom. And this could be freedom in the physical sense. It could also be like freedom in the non-physical sense, in that the user has the power to do like whatever they want, right? So yeah. I can't wait to see how far Oda takes it.
Yeah, me either. I'm incredibly excited, especially since like next chapter we're gonna be getting into the real fight between Luffy and Kaido now.
Yes.
But yeah, according to the Gorosei, because of everything that this fruit can do, it's considered, or it's allegedly, the most ridiculous power in the world.
Yes, so we have the Magu Magu no Mi, which is the most powerful fruit. We have the Guru Guru no Mi, which has the power to destroy the world. And now we have the Nika Nika no Mi, the Hita no Mi, model Nika, that is now the most ridiculous power in the world. I don't know if that makes it an invincible fruit yet, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised either. I think that it means ridiculous in like the most genuine sense, in the fact that like and we'll get into it later when we talk more about what we saw Luffy do with his new power, but in the sense that you can just pull off ridiculous things with it. And I think that really does, like, it's great being powerful like the magma fruit, but ridiculous just to be able to just do something ridiculous. Like, imagine you're fighting someone and you're just like, you do something and you just like are like, okay, but he just does something funny and silly, and all of a sudden like your attack doesn't matter anymore. I think that's like part of the ridiculousness that they're trying to convey this fruit has.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning that the Gorosei knew that Luffy had the Gamu Gamu no Mi the whole time, but for some reason they didn't think he would ever be capable of awakening it. That's why they didn't try to like send people after him sooner, I'm guessing, and try to stop him from awakening it until like the last possible moment against Kaido for some reason.
I was gonna say, I'm sure that they probably thought, they're like, he's just some random kid, he'll probably get killed in the new world before he even gets a chance to understand the kind of power he has.
Yeah, and another thing that I wanted to mention is that they said it's one of the fruits that carries the name of God. So while Luffy has one fruit that's confirmed to be like a god level fruit, there might be other fruits out there. And another prediction that I have is that Blackbeard has a god fruit. It might be
Makes sense.
Yes, so you have the sun fruit, right? You have Luffy's fruit, which represents the sun, and then you have Blackbeard's fruit, which represents the darkness. So it might be that the Yami no Mi is what we think it is. It's just the power of darkness. But I want to bet money that the Yami no Mi actually has to do with some kind of night god. Like, you have someone that's trying to take the world and subject it to pure terror, and then you have someone like Luffy who's trying to free the world and make everybody smile. And those two powers are going to clash at the end, and that's something that I can't wait to see.
Yeah, me neither, and I definitely have to agree with you. It would also explain in the sense that, like, we saw Luffy do things and we're like, rubber shouldn't be able to do that. In the same way we've seen Blackbeard do things and people are like, well, darkness shouldn't be able to do that. The fact that he can negate devil fruit powers from people,
yes.
And the fact he's the only person we've ever seen who's capable of holding two devil fruits in the same body.
Yes.
I mean, it would make a lot of sense for him to have some sort of god tie-in as well, or some sort of deity tie-in that is explaining why his power, he has the power of darkness, but it goes beyond darkness in the same sense.
Yes, and he said that it was the most powerful. He said his dark fruit was the most powerful fruit, and we never really got into why. And I would like to see more of an explanation behind that and some of what Blackbeard is capable of.
Yeah, me too. I'd also like to see whether there are other human fruit models, like in the sense that Nika means like to grin or to smile. So it's like human model smile. Is there a human model frown? And maybe they have really insane powers as well. Human model anger or something, or like, scowl, something like that.
Yeah. And not only that, but you know how the smile kind of links to the smile fruits that Kaido was creating to try to mimic the power of devil fruits. So in a way, Kaido must have been trying to mimic the power of Joy Boy. There's so many ways so many different directions you could take it now that it's been revealed to us what it is. But I think that we could also do a video just covering the theory. So we should probably move on to the rest of the chapter and talk about what we think at the end.
One of my favorite scenes in this chapter that has nothing to do with the hype of learning about the true nature of Luffy's fruit is Hiyori's scene with Orochi, where she reveals why she's betrayed him as far as he's concerned.
Yes. Orochi tries to lie and weasel his way out of it. Oh, I really admired Oden. It was all Kaido. Like, he's just trying to subvert responsibility,
Classic Orochi, dude. What a coward and a scoundrel, but Hiyori's not having it. She knows everything, and she's not having it. She's like, you spat in the face of a samurai you owed. Who would still believe you?
Yes, Hiyori talks of all Oden suffered and endured at their hands because he believed that they would keep their word. I mean, he danced like a fool for 5 long years, never even told his family why, withstood being boiled in oil for an entire hour, all with a smile on his face.
Yes, and listen, Oden is definitely one of my favorite characters in the show because of how amazing he is. Just all his feats alone, when we first see him, he takes out the giant boar, and from then on we see nothing but crazy feat after crazy feat. The only dude who ever put a scar on Kaido, and then on top of that, not only was he boiled in the oil for an entire hour while carrying the rest of his retainers on his back.
Yes,
that takes
real strength. And I think he's one of the only characters without the will of D, or he might be the only character to have died with a smile on his face.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's another interesting connection that we need to make there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, after Hiyori talks about all the stuff that Oden went through, Orochi tries it again with the BS. He's like, oh no, I always said Oden was a great samurai, and if you let me be Shogun, I can ensure his legacy is recognized.
And then you see Hiyori take off the mask and she's starts snapping for real. She's like, hold your tongue, you miserable wretch. I am Kazuki Hiyori. I was always proud to carry my father's name. You never had a trace of honor. Every day you were Shogun was one day too many.
Yes, I loved seeing her snap. It was such an emotional scene, and I just loved it, especially because I know that she's probably been holding that in her heart for so long, especially because she probably suffered in a way that, I know everyone in Wano suffered, but it was so much different for her. That was her family that she watched die. She was alone for years as a child, growing up under his rule. She had to pretend to be, a woman who was in love with him and played music for him, the man who's responsible for killing her father. And I'm sure that must have hurt her for so long. And so for her to finally get this opportunity to get back at him, I'm sure she had been waiting for a very long time. And Orochi's getting scared because he's finally realizing he was like, oh, that revenge is kind of outdated, like the kids aren't doing that these days anymore. And then Kanjuro's flame returns to Orochi, letting him know that he failed at his mission. And Orochi's happy for a second. He's trying to convince him to attack Hiyori. He's like, this is it, like, look at this, like, no matter what, I'll always win because fortune favors the mighty or something. And he's like, now go burn her and let me get my victory. But instead, it ends up going to Orochi and just burning him alive instead, which I think is very poetic justice.
Backfired.
Especially because it burns him alive, which on so many levels is like incredibly poetic because he's responsible for burning Odin alive.
Yes.
He's responsible for the flame that burned all these samurais alive. He was trying to have it burn Hiyori as well. And so the fact is just a culmination of like, you get what you put out. Karma, like he was like, oh, he did all these things to these people, and now he got a taste of his own medicine.
And because he's still under the effects of the sea stone nail, he can't escape. There's nothing he can do.
He can't even use his fruit. No, who cares about the extra lives he has because of his fruit? It's nothing. It's over for him. And I'm so incredibly glad to know that this guy is finally gone, because I swear, seeing him come back every single time was really starting to get to me.
Yes. And he dies at the hands of Hiyori. Well, and his own vengeance.
Yes, and as he's burning, Hiyori says, the dawn will come. The Kozuki clan always keeps its promises. And I think this is incredibly interesting because Luffy's fruit we now know represents the sun god. And so, in a sense, like, the dawn is coming and he represents the sun god and he's liberating them. He is literally the dawn in the sense, because they were like, oh, like, they're fighting during the night and before the dawn of the new day comes, Wano should be liberated. But also, like, Luffy is the sun. His appearance and defeating of Kaido and everyone would be like the dawn approaching in a literal sense.
Yes, the new dawn. Yes. Luffy is loving his new power. He said, I feel like anything is possible now. This is my peak. This is gear 5th.
Yeah, finally, gear 5th. Finally.
Yes.
Oh, man.
There was a lot of...
He is on a whole new level right now.
Yes. Knocking people out on the live floor from the rooftop.
Yes. And then afterwards, he reaches through the roof with a giant hand and pulls Kaido up. He's like, nah, we're not done, bro. Get back up here.
Yes, and in yanking Kaido up, you kind of see like some Looney Tunes special effects there, where Kaido's eyes are like coming out of his... He's getting like yoinked and the eyes are like coming out of his head. And I think that plays into what Oda really wanted now, because, Oda's always said that he gave Luffy the rubber powers because it allows him to have fun with it. And now Oda can get really silly with the powers that Luffy has, right? Which is like... and
we even see it in the fight. We see some of the silliness start to manifest itself.
Yes, his powers are super comical now. Luffy's like laughing like crazy the whole time. Kaido's eyes are coming out of his head.
And Luffy's eyes also pop out of his head. After he pulls Kaido up, he spins him around a few times, smacks him back and forth, all comical. And then Kaido gets up and hits him with a blast breath. And Luffy's too busy laughing after smacking Kaido around to notice at first. But when he does that classic, like, eyes pop out, scream, like, with the tongue and everything.
Yes.
But the best part afterwards is that immediately after seeing the blast come for him, he grabs the ground, pulls it up, and makes it into rubber so it bounces Kaido's blast breath back at him.
Yes. And that's the exact awakening I was looking for. When it was revealed that he was an awakened Zoan user, I was kind of like hesitant to see or assume that he would have the ability to transfer rubber to his surroundings, like, with a normal like Paramecia awakening. Like, how we saw how Katakuri, he was able to turn his literal surroundings into mochi. Doflamingo was able to turn his surroundings into strings. I wasn't sure if Luffy, not being rubber, would be able to turn his surroundings into rubber. But again, having the most ridiculous power, he can obviously do anything within his imagination now, which allows him to turn his surroundings into rubber. And that's just so great, because there were a lot of like speculation behind how Luffy's rubber would affect the surroundings, like when he awakened his devil fruit. And so I'm glad that Oda still allows him to be kind of silly with the surroundings and his power still.
Yes, me too. I think it's so good to see. And before I cover like something else I want to mention, I do want to say that as Luffy's doing this laughter in his Gear 5th Joy Boy form, his laugh always comes out as like she, which I thought was interesting because she in Japanese is like the number 4, and this chapter is 1044, which would be like she, and then so his laughter, which is she, I thought was interesting that it revealed itself in the chapter 44, because we know Oda does like to do stuff like that when he reveals certain things. And I'm wondering if maybe he planned this one as well, or maybe it's one that's a little more coincidental.
Yes, as you know, you hardcore One Piece fans know, Oda plays a lot of word games with the Japanese language, and he has things like that. He's done it a lot of times in the past. If we went into every single instance of that, we'd make this a hour-long video. But the point is, it is definitely something that we think that Oda had planned and something we could look into more. And another thing that I wanted to mention was when Luffy banged Kaido around. Kaido kind of got up and he had that spinning star, or that spinning thing above his head. He's kind of in a daze. And I just think that it's so cool that Oda's taking more liberty with the silliness of the manga now, despite it still being a serious part of the story.
I thought that was really interesting too, and I do like the fact that I'm trying to think of the way to put it into words, I guess. It's Joy Boy. I always, we always heard the name, and there was always the stuff, and I'm even more curious what's at Laugh Tale now, because I remember what everyone saw made them laugh, and knowing Joy Boy and seeing this power that is just laughter and fun, I'm really so curious as to what the One Piece is now. What are you gonna see when you get there that would make you laugh and cry laughing to a point where it's the funniest thing that you've ever seen? And seeing Luffy just have fun in this fight, against Kaido of all people. Before, when they were fighting, it was so serious. It was a life or death thing, and now it's still life or death. But Luffy, because of his new form and power, he can't help but just have fun and laugh about it. Yes. And I think that's really interesting.
I want to see Rayleigh's reaction if he were to see Luffy in this form, because I think that he would be I think he would have he'd be in tears, because it would be such a throwback to what he's seen when he got to Laugh Tale with Roger and the rest of the crew. And it just might be something that he's so overwhelmed by emotion by, because Luffy's that step closer to becoming the next Pirate King,
Yeah. And at the end of the chapter, we get a nice thing where Kaido kind of, as he gets up, he's like, "Oh, Straw Hat, I'm glad you're okay." And he kind of apologizes. He's like, "Yeah, sorry about that idiot before. I didn't want our battle to end like that." And Luffy's like, "Don't even sweat it. Let's finish this," with a big grin on his face as the chapter ends. And so...
Yes. And with that wrapped up the chapter nicely. And I can't wait till 1045 comes out, because I'm sure
no break this time.
No breaks. I'm not reading any spoilers. I'm just gonna go right into the action when it's released.
Yes, and I'm so interested because we've seen a lot of other people in the crew on Luffy's side notice the fact that Luffy's changed and what's going on with him, but we still haven't seen from Zoro. Sanji's up, and we know that everyone else is up right now. Even Luffy, who we thought was going to be out for a bit, is now once again up and ready to fight, but we still have no clue what's going down with Zoro and what was happening with him. And so I'm curious to see whether or not this sudden shift in what happened with Luffy will resonate with him, and kind of he'll also wake up and be able to see his captain's new form and what his captain is really pulling out the stops against Kaido.
Yeah, I need Zoro to be all right, man. He's my favorite character in the series. It's too soon for him to die, just to get beat or killed after he took down King of all people. Yeah, it would be so disappointing.
I will say, before the Wano fight arc started, when they were when they were making their approach towards Kaido's fortress or whatever, I remember my friend had me like read this Reddit thread that was someone's theory of what's going to happen in One Piece. And it was someone whose predictions in the past for like a lot of things have been spot on, and they said that they were like, someone's gonna die during the Wano arc, someone on the Straw Hats. And I was like, all right, listen, some of the things he was saying seemed plausible and made sense, but I was like, no way someone on the Straw Hats is gonna die during Wano. But like,
Well,
now I'm not so sure, especially because it's been so long since we see Zoro, and the last thing we saw from him was a Grim Reaper himself with a scythe. And I'm like, I'm just hoping and pleading. I'm like, please don't have this be like, not yet at least. If people are gonna die, not yet. Not when they're this close to really like making it there. They've taken on emperors, they're unlocking these new powers. I'm hoping that the crew can survive a little longer.
well, I was thinking it was Luffy that died, right? Because his voice like disappeared, and no one could like hear his, like, anyone that was like listening heard Luffy's voice like disappear. They were, people were pretty sure that it was a death, and then Luffy coming back to life as a sun god because of his heartbeat changing, signified that Luffy was like awakened now, and that he had to die to be reborn. And a lot of speculation is that Kaido wanted to die so that he could be reborn as Joy Boy. So I'm thinking that Luffy did actually die, and he was the person on the crew that like died in Wano, but it was to become reborn as a god. Right.
I would like that. That would make sense. That would be pretty good. I also wonder if maybe the rebirth thing, since the devil fruit ties into the sun god, whether or not, because there isn't much that we know about the lore of the sun god. We hear things here and there. I'm wondering if maybe in his story there's something that has to do with like a rebirth aspect as well, and maybe that's why it's kind of a condition to awaken the devil fruit. Maybe is that you need to be like on the verge of death in order for you to be reborn on the new level of power.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a potential, right? We aren't 100% sure, but I think that we'll be learning about it soon. So
yeah.
With that, I think that kind of ends the video there. And so you guys who are watching the video, definitely give us our flowers. Leave your likes, comments on our predictions and our insights, and of course, be sure to tune in next time for our next video. Any other last words, Akil?
Not really, Make sure you're always supporting One Piece whenever you get the chance. Oda's working hard for our sake, so we gotta do our part to give back. Buy One Piece manga, buy One Piece merch, whatever you gotta do, because any little bit helps. And yeah, I think that's about it. So Q&A out.
Q&A out.